Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Corner Office here on what day is it?
Thursday.
Thursday. It's Thursday.
Yep.
This week has kind of been a time loop for me just because of finals. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Classes ended on Tuesday, but like things have been like really strange thus far. Yesterday kind of felt like a Sunday. Today kind of feels like a Sunday. So like I'm kind of all over the place. But back with a Thursday episode, getting this out before the Thursday night football game. As per usual, we have our weekend roundups of the NFL, what's going on in the news, and then some NBA stuff to, just round it out just because that's what we're going to do. And then we have, as always, our picks for you guys. So just excited to be back in here and in the stew, and hopefully won't stutter like that ever again in my entire
What a way to kick off this episode, huh? Flip that one.
Yeah. No, make sure that one.
I think that regardless, the first thing that we jump into is last night Bill Belichick signed on to be the new head coach of the UNC Tar Heels, which is honestly mind-blowing, to be honest with you. Completely came out of left field. I, for one, was caught off guard. I don't know about you. But, I mean, I think the question is, how does he deal with coaching collegiate for the first time in 30 years? Longer.
Was he a collegiate coach before that?
I believe he started at Navy.
Okay. So the interesting thing to me is, like, I really felt that UNC was going to go in a younger direction, like leaving Mac Brown, a guy who coached at, Notre Dame for a number of years and then came over to UNC, like, obviously old dude, probably didn't really play didn't do super well there. And like, yeah, go ahead.
Bill Belichick has never coached college before. His dad coached at Navy.
Okay. Yeah, which makes this like doubly interesting, especially when like I think of Bill Belichick in coaching right now. I think he's going to be trying to chase Don Shula's win record, not necessarily like he's going to, coach a bunch of college kids. Second thing is, like, all of his former players, regardless of if this like opinion matters or not, like Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, Tom Brady, like when asked, like they've been like, no, he would not make, no, there's no way he would go and coach college football. So like there has to be something that's bringing him to UNC, especially like today with the NIL era and like all these types of things. Like I just think so few people can like envision Bill Belichick putting up with all the BS that goes on right now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like when you think of coaches that don't put up with bullshit that doesn't have to do with the field,
yeah,
he's the first guy that comes to mind.
I agree.
So it's kind of a head scratcher when you're thinking, like, if he was going to do this, why didn't he do it years ago? And even at this time, he's 2 seasons away from the win record.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's clearly something that he doesn't care about.
Right.
And, I mean, obviously he's getting a boatload of money to go to UNC.
Yeah.
And probably more than he would be in the NFL.
Like, I think it's going to be another, like Deion Sanders type situation, even more so when you're just going to get an influx of really good recruits because you're playing for Bill Belichick. You know what I mean? So, like, I get that too from
Absolutely,
a UNC perspective.
But Deion Sanders' presence as a coach goes beyond just who, like, his name, right? Because he started with Jackson State with this whole media thing.
Yep.
And he's like a very prominent, like, I wouldn't necessarily call him a media figure because he's a football coach, but he's definitely prominent in the media as a personality more so than a coach, right?
Yeah.
So when you think of Bill Belichick, it's purely football. And yes, I agree. They'll probably land the top prospects, but even then, it's still 2 or 3 years down the road. And how many more years does he have in the tank?
It's also like why do you want to go and build a college program? You know what I mean? Like what? Like you've coached the highest level of football that you possibly could for 30 some odd years. You know what I mean? Like it just to me, it's like
sorry.
No. It's just like, to me, it's like at some point, like he's such a high level football mind that like I get like the idea of going and coaching in college may seem fun at first, right? But like you get like 2 or 3 seasons in here and these guys aren't like picking up the high level NFL concepts that you're going to want them to be putting in. Because what he said in past interviews with the Pat McAfee show and some other places is like he wants this to be a pipeline to the NFL, right? He wants to coach in college and then put in like an NFL ready scheme, which we've already seen a lot of college quarterbacks who then transition into the NFL. Like they can't handle it. You know what I mean? So like, what's the drop off there that you're going to see between a guy like Belichick and a guy who like is trying to implement the scheme? And then when it doesn't work, does he revert back to something that's more simple, even though it's not necessarily what he wants to do? Like, what's his plan? That's what I'm interested in.
I think another interesting layer to this is the Cowboys' job is most assuredly opening up at the end of the season.
Yes.
And that is the biggest name in football, arguably in America.
Yep.
And he must not care about this record at all. He must not care about his NFL legacy. So when you look at Bill Belichick's list of accolades as a whole, what does he have to do at UNC for it to add to his legacy rather than kind of honestly detract from it?
Yeah, it feels like a national championship, at least an ACC championship.
It feels like at least one national championship.
Yeah, which is a crazy thing to say, like, outright. You know what I mean? And to be fair, like, I think it is easier to make the transition from being an NFL coach to being a college coach, whereas it's harder to be a college coach and then go to the NFL.
Well, but I also think that it's just how you coach a football team. Some guys are great in college and some guys are great in the NFL. And I think we've seen NFL coaches go back to college and not be as good as they were presumed to be. The first name that comes to mind is Cliff Kingsbury taking over that USC team with Caleb Williams and disappointing expectations, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think year one, his expectations are going to be very high. And that's not because of – that's not how it should be. They will not probably be the best team in the ACC year one.
Well, it depends on how many people they retain. But yeah, the ACC has been a very competitive conference for a while now. And it's only getting better because you also have, Bill O'Brien was just a former head coach in the NFL, and now he's coaching at BC. So it is
doing
improving.
a good job with it, right?
Yeah, it is improving.
And you've added teams like Stanford, who just appointed Andrew Luck to be the first general manager of college football.
And you have Boise State to worry about now with the roster realignment and SMU. Like, these are or not Boise State. You have SMU though. There are teams that have now moved into the ACC that weren't previously there and are giving you problems.
And then you still have to worry about teams like a Clemson, right? Or a
Miami.
Florida State.
Yeah.
Florida State's ACC, right?
Yeah.
So, and Miami, who right now have another year of Cam Ward, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Is he coming back to school?
You have to play at least 2 in college.
Oh, I think he's going to the draft.
You have to play 2 in college. You cannot be a one and done.
I know. I don't think he's a freshman. Oh, yeah, 2025 draft. Yeah, 2025. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has at least one more year, and they will be very good next season. So I think that they're still 2 or 3 years down the road. And if you were thinking of Bill Belichick and you're like, well, if you're just going to kick the can down the road a couple of years, why wouldn't you go sign with an NFL team that's going to be mediocre for a couple seasons and get the win record?
Yep.
And then retire. So it is an absolute head scratcher, but I guess that we will just kind of have to see what happens.
Yeah,
it's certainly going to be interesting.
It's also not a program with a whole ton of history, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
especially
they're
recently.
just gonna there had to be an opening, a job that's opening up for a guy like that. That obviously the resources that you're gonna have at UNC are gonna be bar down, like the best in the business, right? That's just how they do sports programs over there. But UNC's not a football school. You know what I mean?
They don't have a lot of booster money going towards their football program.
Agreed. So now you're expecting to get more because Bill Belichick is there. I guess that's a valid take, but they're always going to be a basketball school.
Well, and think about it this way, right? If they transition their booster money to go towards the football team,
yep.
What happens to the basketball team?
Right. How much does that hurt them?
How much do they lose? And they are already a team right now that's riding out a class of guys who have been there since Roy Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are on their last legs. And obviously they're going to keep getting recruits. They already have great recruits lined up for next season.
Right.
But is there kind of a butterfly effect with this, which is kind of something that we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I agree. It's so just interesting.
Definitely strange. But moving into the NFL.
Yep.
Monday Night Football was the first Simpsons broadcast, and dude, Ralph Wiggum went off.
No, Lisa Simpson went off.
Both. He was both of them. His first touchdown, he was Ralph Wiggum, dude.
There's one clip of the Simpsons broadcast that's it's like a pass over the middle, and it's blown up by Mo Sislak. It's been playing in my head for 48 hours ever since it happened. I'm there's some linebacker out there whose first tackle is going to be known as blown up by Mo Sislak in the middle in the C gap. I just think that's super funny. I really like it when they do those fun things. I don't really understand it, but it's pretty cool, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely weird. Why did they go to The Simpsons? I don't understand why that's a thing.
Like they did the Slime Bowl a couple years ago, the Nickelodeon Slime Bowl. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was like Baker
Mitch
Mayfield
Trubisky.
on the Rams, right?
Mitch Trubisky was MVP, Nickelodeon Most Valuable Player.
Yeah.
So there are only like a few of those ever. You know, that's
maybe
be on
just
the
one. Let's look up the list of
NBA. Yeah,
list
really
of
quickly.
Nick valuable players.
Is that like Mitch Trubisky's like career highlight? You know what? I have a friend who's a Bears fan. I'm gonna send them a text right now and ask.
Jordan Love also is an MVP. So yeah, I mean, Ja'Marr Chase is who we were referencing. If you look at the Bengals statistics, Ja'Marr Chase is leading in every statistical category for wide receivers. Joe Burrow is leading in every statistical category for quarterbacks. So naturally, you would assume that they're the best team in their division, right?
You would think.
Their
defense is horrendous.
Their defense is 11 guys who are nearsighted. I don't think that they can. They don't have a single 2020 guy on their defense.
It's so bad. But yeah, no, Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase is putting together like a season where he is set to get paid. You know what I mean? Like, I think you got to back the Brinks truck up because I think like most people forget like the beginning of this season, like he was in a massive contract dispute.
He didn't
he's
go to
clearly the best wide receiver in the league. Clearly.
I mean, who would compete right now?
I mean, Justin Jefferson is, talent-wise probably up there with him, but he doesn't have nearly the same numbers.
It's Chase, Jettas, Amon-Ra. Those are the clear top three.
Yeah, and people expected it to be like who? CD and Tyreek, and they both regressed this year. I think CD.
Well, I think that's partially due to quarterback play.
Correct, I agree on both accounts for that. But I think that Ja'Marr has clearly cemented himself as being in the top two, maybe even not two conversation for the NFL's best wide receiver right now. He's had 2 50-plus point fantasy games. I mean,
and a 45-plus fantasy game.
He's been unbelievable this year. Unbelievable. I think that there is a legitimate shout where I think there's a legitimate shout for both him and Burrow if this team is above 500 that both of them are MVP candidates. But the fact of the matter is that they have not won games because of their defense.
Yep, and it's a lot of games, and they have both been very healthy this season.
Yep.
And I mean, we've talked about Cincinnati's struggles all year, and it's something that is very clear. I think Zach Taylor's on the hot seat. I think he has to be.
Well, I don't understand if you're the Bengals why you don't go get a defensive coordinator like Robert Saleh, who's available. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think it's a little more difficult than just going and getting him.
Okay.
But at the same time, I do agree. So there's a lot of troubles going on there. Moving forward, looking at the other team, if you're the Cowboys, what do you do at this point? I think that if you're the Cowboys, I think that it's time to seriously consider where your draft position is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that ideally they are in a place where they can go after a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who will probably be in that 6 to 12 range.
I agree.
And I think that knowing Jerry Jones, he's going to be the guy who's going to take a chance on a guy like Jeanty.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree. I think their running back position is probably super weak right now. And obviously, there is nobody that is going to bite on Dak if he's in trade conversations. You know what I mean? So, he's
how much value is he worth, though?
That's what I'm saying. He's your quarterback of the future. You know what I mean? He's one of the worst contracts in the NFL right now, especially if he can't be playing. And now you just got to shore up the things that, you can and try and roll it out for another season. I'm going to be honest with you. You said Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat, and I think he is too. But I think there's a very genuine possibility that he does not get fired just because he has been a guy who has bent the knee to Jerry Jones at every single which way. And this has led them to where they are right now.
And it just all goes back to the point of why is a borderline senile old man in power of the biggest franchise in sports. You could say in sports.
In sports, yeah, you could say that.
So, if Jerry Jones really cared about this team, he'd take his hands off the reins, right, and do the smart thing. You would think, but he's too powerful. So, I mean, the Cowboys now are going to fall back into that, mediocre quarterback. They don't really have a direction right now. This Cowboys team doesn't.
Directionless. Yep.
So that's something
they were slated as being they were supposed to win the NFC East.
They were definitely supposed to compete with the Eagles.
Oh, I think the way that last season went, I think they were supposed to outright win. But
but then the Eagles went and picked up Saquon, right?
Okay, fair.
So, I mean,
fair.
Moving towards that Eagles team, they've won 9 in a row. Yep. They haven't lost since Nick Sirianni buzzed his head.
Yes.
And I still don't think that they have faith in him as a coach, the fan base nor the players. So how good really is this Eagles team?
I mean, they're as good as Saquon Barkley can make them, is what I'll say. Because, like, internally, despite the fact that they've won 9 straight games, they have a lot of issues right now. One of them is they're not keeping A.J. Brown happy, which is a big problem because that is your wide receiver one. He's seen less than 10 targets in the past, 7 games. How do you not target him more than 10 times a game? How?
And he's a guy who is not afraid to go be a number one option somewhere else, and he will make any team in the NFL better. He's another one of those guys who was in that top 5 conversation, probably top 3 conversation going into this year.
Yep.
And hasn't really been able to live up to the expectations despite his talent.
Yep.
Which I think is not necessarily his fault also. So I agree with you. This Eagles team is as good as Saquon makes it. It's as good as Jalen Hurts makes it. And this season, he has again not taken the step. And since they went to the Super Bowl, we've been asking the question, when is Jalen Hurts going to take that step and turn into a quarterback that you can depend on? And he has proven that he still cannot do that despite their record, which is very good. I think that they're a team that could seriously see themselves being upset just like they were last year.
And I could also see them being a team that gets to the NFC Championship game.
Absolutely.
They're very hot and cold. It really feels like. And it is if Saquon Barkley doesn't have 2 touchdowns and 130 yards, they look like a bad football team. And when he does do that, give him the rock every single possession.
Every time.
That's what it feels like.
And they, just like the Chiefs, they're a team that has won games that they were supposed to crush by not that many points. They almost lost to the Panthers last week.
Yeah, but A.J. Brown not being an 1,000-yard receiver at this point in the season is crazy to me. You know what I mean? I just think that you have to get him more involved if you're this Eagles offense and you expect to be, a dominant team.
And it's even crazier thinking that they haven't had Devonta Smith for the last 5 weeks.
Yep.
So they just got him back and they still weren't finding him.
Yep.
Dallas Goedert's out for the year.
Yep.
Right? Again. So there's seriously some holes on this Eagles team that they have to find out from a game plan perspective. And I think that that's why they have not been a great team so far.
Okay.
You know who has been a great team so far? The Detroit Lions.
Yeah, they've
played
been really
a great
good.
game on Thursday against the Packers.
Yep.
And they're just a team who, if you watch that last drive, last Thursday, it was very methodical. Almost, it looked like a scripted first drive, but it was at the end of the game with the game on the line.
Yeah.
And they just do what they have to win football games. And I think that at this point, we've been saying it all year, I don't really know who touches them right now.
I mean, I think the Packers gave them a fantastic game, and there was also some referee stuff that happened during the course of that. But when you're as good a team as the Lions are, you're going to get calls. It seems like that's kind of how the NFL is set up at this point. I just think the Lions are such an impossible team to hate against, to root against right now. You know what I mean? They've been so good for so long this season. Everybody loves the fact that they're good right now. And despite the fact that 2 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago, maybe these close 3-point games, these are games that the Lions are losing. And Dan Campbell has completely changed the culture and made it so that this team is ready for the playoffs. I do think they're the best team in the NFL right now. Do I have confidence that they're a Super Bowl contender? Yes, they're a contender, but do I think they're going to win? History serves to say no. You know what I mean? But I think everybody in America is kind of pulling for this team just because it's so easy to rally behind a guy like Jared Goff, who was thrown out by the LA Rams, Dan Campbell, who was on the 0-16 team, a team that only won 1 or 2 games in his first year. The way that they've just revived the squad, I mean, it's really commendable. And I mean, they were a play away from the Super Bowl last year, right? They gave up a second half lead. Can they improve upon that? What are the things that this team can do? I just think everybody's super excited that the Lions are back. That being said, they are playing in the best conference in the National Football League right now, being the NFC North, with 3 teams above 700. You know what I mean? You got the Lions right behind them. You got the 11-2 Vikings, and then right behind them, you got the 9-4 Packers. Those are 3 teams that could be leading any division across the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I hear what you say about history not being on the Lions side, and it's absolutely true. But the fact of the matter is, history was meant to be rewritten. And I think that this is the year that they do it. And I think that it's because they've surrounded themselves with franchise players. They have a core of guys that won't leave, both on offense and defense. Jared Goff wants to stay. Gibbs and Montgomery want to be there. Amon-Ra wants to be there. Jameson Williams wants to be there. Sam Laporta will not leave. Frank Ragnow. And then you look on the defense, and there's Aiden Hutchinson, who's obviously hurt right now. And they're still playing this well. And Brian Branch. And, I mean, they're just full. They have a championship core of guys that want to be there and win. And that's what I think that they're the only team that I can look at in the NFL right now and say, that is a core of guys who will work together and be a team rather than a collection of players and win the Super Bowl right now.
Okay.
You mentioned how good the Vikings were. They absolutely kicked the shit out of the Falcons. Honestly, like, I don't have another way that I can word that. Last week. Despite having less total yards than the Falcons. Did you see the play where Justin Jefferson cooked Robert Alphonse so bad that he did not know what direction he was going in?
No, I didn't watch this game at all.
It was a great football game. Kirk Cousins in his last 5 games has 0 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. I think that if you're the Atlanta Falcons, it becomes a real conversation as to when you put Michael Penix Jr. in.
Yeah, I think that's probably why you signed him in the first place, right? Or why you drafted him in the first place was it goes both ways. Like, to be, the guy who is going to develop the young quarterback. The obvious thing that like stands out about the entire Kirk Cousins situation right now is the amount of money that he's making. Right? Like, he's on a 4-year, $180 million contract.
120, I believe. 120.
I think it's 180 mil. But that being like with a like $50 million signing, but like you have committed.
It is 180. Wow.
Yeah. You have committed to him for $45 million a year. You know what I mean? Like, that is the guy that you're paying right now. And I think that the plan is, of course, to have Penix step up, but you're not going to be paying a backup 45 mil. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, but they could find ways to offload that contract. I think that really the Falcons. I think that maybe the Falcons' main issue this year is that they're better than they thought that they were going to be. I think that they knew what they had with Bijan. I think that going into this season, Drake London was a question mark, and he's proven to be a huge upside. And I think that the biggest story on this offense is Darnell Mooney. I mean, he's turning into one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league. Yeah. And that's something that you did not expect from him, especially in it being his first season on the team. So I think that the Falcons thought that they were going to be kind of riding out with Kirk while they got these guys to develop for a couple seasons and then move towards Penix when it was time, right? But I think that they're a little ahead of schedule, and that's why they're out of sorts right now. The big question mark to me is why do they completely neglect Kyle Pitts? We've been asking this question for years. He doesn't even get targets. Is it because he's a bad route runner and he's just good at catching a football?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, is he a good NFL tight end?
I think the jury is still out on him, right? Like, he had one really good season and everybody's kind of fell for the fantasy trap ever since then. You know what I mean? Of like drafting him, expecting him to have that type of season again.
But at what point does that run out?
Yeah,
will it?
I agree.
It may not. They have a lot of questions. But let's play the buy-sell game, shall we?
Okay.
This will probably be the last time we do this in the regular season. Give me a team in the AFC that you are buying in on right now.
All right. So the AFC has been, kind of a pretty washed division, I would say. Aside from some of the teams, like, we kind of expected each of these teams who are at the top of their divisions to stay there and be there at the moment. A team that I am buying stock in, if I had to pick one, just because I feel like the AFC more so than the NFC is kind of set. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, like, more or less, like, the teams that are at the top of their divisions are going to clinch the division. I'm going to buy stock in the Dolphins. I think that I could see them. They're still in the hunt right now for a playoff spot. I think I could see them fighting their way into the wild card. And, with Tua Tagovailoa behind center, like, they're a much better team. And I do think that Mike McDaniels is a very good head coach. They just beat a tough Jets team, despite the fact that people don't respect the Jets. I still think that they have a lot of talent and can give you a hard game. And because of that, I think that, with Tua And with Devon Achane and with Tyreek Hill, like with the pieces that this team has, like they could be dangerous and could sneak into the playoffs. So I'm going to take them as my bye team.
My buy team, I'm going to buy on the Chargers. I know that they're in the playoffs right now. I think that they're going to stay in the playoffs, and I think that if there's one team that's going to kind of drop out of that hunt and give way to a team like the Dolphins, that it'll be the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
I really liked the way that the Chargers played the Chiefs the other night, and it was just another instance of the Chiefs kind of escaping.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't necessarily think that the expectation is for the Chargers to win a playoff game this year, but I think that they're a team that could give trouble to one of the top teams.
Okay.
And so I'm going to buy in on the Chargers. I'm going to take the sell. I just mentioned them. I'm going to sell in the Denver Broncos. I've been fading them all year, and they keep proving me wrong. But it's a young team. Bo Nix is a young quarterback. I think that, as I mentioned before, they're going to be the team to fall out of that wild card. And if they don't, I think that they will get clean swept in the first round.
Yeah, they have 3 tough games to end the season out, which I don't really hate your pick on. Obviously, I think the Chiefs will bench their starters on January 5th, so maybe that won't be as good of a game as I'm anticipating it being. But like to play a team like the Colts, who are still in the hunt, to play the Chargers, who you're going to be battling with for that wild card spot, and then to play the Bengals, who, you know, there's still a way if they win out that they could get to the playoffs. I don't see it happening. You know, that's like a tough stretch of games to get through. So I do think that I like the choice there. For me, I don't really know who to sell in. Like there are so many, like you said, a lot of teams in the middle here. So I'm going to sell on the Houston Texans. I think I just don't see them being anything more than a first round exit team. You know what I mean? Like they've looked really, really out of sync this year. The sophomore slump for CJ Stroud has been a real thing that's happened and really like inhibited their offense a lot. I think the injury to Stephon Diggs has been a problem for them just because now you have Nico Collins back as your number 1 wide receiver, and then your number 2 is Tank Dell, who has been, you know, he's been serviceable for however long he's been in the league.
He's another guy who's having a sophomore slump this year, though.
Correct. He hasn't been, you know, as involved as you would like, but like I think that you expected this offense to be a lot more dynamic than it has been. And they've dropped some really bad games to some really bad teams. They had a really close one against the Jags the other day. And I just really don't think that this team is as good as people were expecting it to be this far into the season. Now, that being said, again, you have a tough stretch of games where you're playing the Chiefs and the Ravens to end out, and then the Dolphins, a team that I just mentioned, who I think are really solid this weekend. So I don't know where this team lands. I think they win their division, but I don't think that they make it out of the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I could see them finishing with an 8-8 record, and had I not taken the Broncos, I would have taken the Texans, mainly because they haven't had any consistency, besides Joe Mixon, who has been absolutely incredible this year. They have not seen consistency from their wide receivers, which we thought we were going to see, and that's something that you touched on. But let's move to the NFC. In terms of NFC, give me one team that you are buying in on right now.
All right, let's move over to the NFC division, shall we? So the one team that I am going to be buying stock in is the LA Rams right now. I think that this is a team that is going to establish itself as the top of the NFC West. I don't see it with the Seattle Seahawks. Like, I don't see the longevity of it with this team. I think that Matt Stafford, along with his supporting cast, will be a team to be reckoned with. If this offense is clicking, it's really hard to stop. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with the LA Rams right now to get into the playoffs.
I got to stop giving you first pick because you keep taking all the ones that I was going to go with. So I'm gonna check audible here to the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, I think that they are obviously missing Chris Godwin, but their running back room is very, very good. And people did not think that that was going to be the case going into the season. Rachaad White was obviously bad at the start of the season, but he's really starting to figure it out. I think he scored a touchdown in his last 5 games. Yeah. And Bucky is also lit. Like,
who has been injured, but is now,
somewhat back. And if they can have him healthy for the playoffs, they're scoring 28 points a game right now. That's third in the NFC, only behind the Commanders and the Lions. So, I mean, I think that they're a good football team. I don't necessarily think that their expectations are all that high, especially if they win this division. But I think that they're a team that, if they get through their first round matchup, can give someone like the Philadelphia Eagles or like the Seattle Seahawks like a serious run for their money.
Okay. Give me a team that you're going to sell on before I pick the one that you want.
I am selling on the Washington Commanders.
Interesting.
And I think that it's
that's too bad.
I think that it's partially because they were so good for such a short period of time that everyone fell in love with them, and they were very good.
Yep.
but I think that they've kind of met their expectations, and I think that a first-round loss for them is still a win of a season, which I think is what is going to happen, right? But I don't think that they'll make it much further than that. And if they do, then it'll be a disappointing second game, I think.
All right. I like that. I'm selling whatever remaining stock I had in the San Francisco 49ers. I just don't see this team as being the same team.
You're not getting any value for that.
I know, seriously. But like, I just want nothing to do with them at this point. They do play the Rams tonight, who I just bought a lot of stock in. So hopefully that holds true here. And maybe I hold off until after this game and then do a little, insider trading here.
I mean, you sold low and bought high, which is like the first rule of NFL buy sell. You do not do that. Bad value.
But that being said, I just don't think that this team has the juice this year, especially with CMC going down. And unfortunately, like I think that their season is probably capped for this year. So I'm going to get rid of the 49ers if I can.
Yeah, that's not a bad take at all. All right, let's move out of the NFL. And I know that we talked about college a little bit before. And this was something that we actually neglected talking about before we got on the show. And I can't even believe that we forgot about it. The college football playoff is set.
Yeah.
And this is the best time to watch college football, in my opinion. And it's full of, I think that this is the first year we're looking at the 12-team format. And I think that there's a lot of really interesting teams in here. When you were coming up with the 12-team format, this is exactly what you were picturing. And I think that it's going perfectly. There are even people out there arguing that college football is better than the NFL right now.
Yeah.
There's not that many compelling arguments to say otherwise.
Yeah. I think this is the first time that you're seeing like the top the top 12 teams in college football, at least the top 4, not be the best 4 teams in college.
Alabama's not in it this year.
Alabama's not in it, which is
crazy.
Massive move by the college football playoff, by the way.
And also think everybody was right move
to get in. I agree. Like by the standard of the system, they should not have been in, but it is a massive nut move by the NCAA to keep them out. That being said, you have Oregon as the 1, Georgia is the 2, Boise State is the 3, Arizona State is the 4. Wow.
Crazy game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of room for upsets here. I mean, first and foremost, you have Tennessee versus Ohio State. I think if Ohio State wins this game, I think they beat Oregon. I really do. Second off, I think the winner of Texas versus Clemson beats Arizona State. I think Georgia wins.
I think that's something that we have to address before we get too far is that for the first time, the college football playoff will have home field advantage.
Correct.
Which is incredibly interesting.
Yes.
In terms of just like the landscape, right? Yes. So like a team like SMU, who's never played in a game as big as they're about to, has to go into State College, Pennsylvania, and beat Penn State in probably a whiteout, right?
Yep.
So I mean, Tennessee's playing Ohio State. I don't think Tennessee's a great football team. I do not know how to pronounce their quarterback's name. I think he's good at football, but they haven't been one of those teams that's making noise this year.
Okay.
And Ohio State suffered the worst loss in college football this season when they lost to Michigan. Yeah. So those are 2 teams that, I mean, were probably really slated to be higher than they are right now and really need a win.
Yep.
And I don't know if I agree with your Ohio State beating Oregon take. I don't know if you watched the Big Ten championship last week.
I did.
I thought Oregon looked absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
So I mean, back to your point, Texas, Ohio State looks like they're probably going to win this one, but even Tennessee could probably take it, and then you have a great game there. I think Texas rolls through the Peach Bowl. I think that they beat Arizona State and Clemson. And then if Penn State can win this weekend, I think that them versus Boise State is a really great game in terms of the landscape of competition between the conferences right now. The question with Boise State all season has been how good really are they at football?
Okay.
And as of right now, they're slated as the 3. So I think that is going to be a great game regardless of who wins.
All right.
And then I also think that Georgia are pretenders this season. Both of their quarterbacks went down in the SEC game.
Yep.
I think that they are going to have a very, very hard road to win this final, especially going against a team like Notre Dame or Indiana, who have both been good this season.
Interesting. I think that Oregon has a much harder side of the bracket than Georgia.
I think that they have a harder side of the bracket, but Georgia also has no starting quarterback right now, and this bye week's huge for them.
Okay.
But narrowly beating Texas last week and having both of your quarterbacks be injured was not good for them.
Yep, I agree.
such a hater with Kirby Smart. I don't like him.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first time that we've seen the college football playoff look like this. And hopefully it's not the last, because I really do think that it's giving an opportunity to some of these teams that we never really expected to be here. Arizona State, Indiana, SMU, Boise State. Like, these are teams that would have never been in the college football playoff the regular way that it's done. And it's giving a lot of these smaller teams an opportunity to go on the biggest stage and win a national championship.
I think that it's also attracting people like us who never grew up watching college football just because of the region.
Yeah. We
are from a region where no one cares about college football.
Yeah.
We are actually interested to watch because of the
possibility for upset,
the spectrum of teams that made it.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to take after March Madness's mentality, where it's like anything can happen. And I think that this year, truly anything can happen. In the college
there was not a clear one aside from Oregon this entire year. Like seeds 2 through 12 were completely just up in arms for the entire season. So this is an interesting case, and I'm really looking forward to watching some college football this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, me too. Let's move into the NBA. It's been a busy week, but this is sadly the time of the year in the NBA where no one really cares. And I mean, they're doing the in-season tournament. It's going well again for its second season.
And Christmas edition games are pretty awesome. The commercials are great. But other than that, like, yes, this is kind of like the malaise version of the NBA where like the players don't really care and we don't really care as viewers.
So, I mean, the competition hasn't been fantastic, but we have some bullet points to go over here. Let's play a little game.
Okay.
I'm going to run through some New York Knicks big men over the past 30 years.
So we're playing King of the Hill? All right.
We're playing King of the Hill. You're going to ask me, or you're going to answer the question, right?
Okay, yep.
Karl Anthony Towns or Kristaps Porzingis? Cat or Tyson Chandler?
Cat.
Keep in mind how good these guys were.
Yep.
Cat or Amar'e Stoudemire?
I'm going to go with Cat. I think Amar'e Stoudemire had the best half season in Knicks history, but
correct.
Other than that, like,
that's the right answer.
Yeah.
Eddie Curry.
Cat.
Larry Johnson.
Cat.
Patrick Ewing.
Okay,
so Cat is the best big man for the Knicks since Patrick Ewing.
I truly think so. Yeah, I really do think so. I don't really think there's like much of an argument for that either. I think that he has been the best big man for the Knicks since Patrick Ewing. Now, that being said, like it's kind of hard to list accolades because none of the Knicks players won anything. You know what I mean? None of them have been championship winners. So it is hard to say like what that really looks like, but they have been devoid of a really good big for a while now. And I do think that Karl Anthony Towns has kind of been the best player on this team this year, despite the fact that they have Jalen Brunson as supposedly their number one player. He just had 19-19 against the Hawks in a loss. You know what I mean?
Like he had 17 in the first 3 quarters.
He has really established himself as a really, really good player. And like, I don't know what type of fit I was really expecting in New York. But I do think that, I've been pleasantly surprised by the way that Karl Anthony Towns has kind of just slotted into this Knicks team, despite the fact that they're probably not playing up to their expectation level yet.
And I think that it boils down to him changing his play style, which none of us thought that he was going to do.
Yes.
And it seems to be working from a personal standpoint, and it may not be working for the team, but if we're talking about Karl Anthony Towns and not the New York Knicks as a whole, it's been a great fit for him so far. I mean, he's up there in league leaders and rebounds, which is something that you never expected from him.
Yeah, I agree.
So
he's starting to realize some of that defensive potential that he had with Kentucky as well.
Definitely.
And obviously, like, the scoring punch that he has is just going to be an all-star caliber player.
He is 0.01 rebounds per game behind the league leaders, which is crazy seeing his statistics before. And I think he's turning into like a real big man. And when was the last time that we had a big man in this league whose job was to get the ball in the low post, bump twice, and then go up with a fadeaway? Tim Duncan?
Yeah, Dirk, Tim Duncan, KG.
It's bringing old basketball back. And between him and Jalen Brunson, they don't operate behind the three-point line, which is very fun to watch.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's horrible to watch.
Sometimes it's bad to watch. It depends.
Last night it was bad to watch.
Depends on the day.
But I think he's been super fun rather than great. I did put in our list, still lost to the Hawks, though. So the Hawks will be going against the Bucks in the in-season tournament semifinal. Alex, if the Bucks win the in-season tournament, what does that mean for them this season?
It means that Darvin Ham is the greatest in-season tournament head coach of all time. The guy has never lost a game in the in-season tournament. It's uncanny to how many games you've won that don't matter. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's cool. You know, I think we both like said now that we can admit that the Bucks are, you know, back. You know, they're closer to being the team that we expected them to be than they were at the beginning of the season. But that being said, what did it mean for the Lakers last year? It meant that all their players got an extra $500,000. Like, good for them, good for the G Leaguers, good for the two-way guys. But it doesn't mean anything for the entirety of the season.
So let me pose a hypothetical question towards you.
Okay.
Let's say that the Bucks go out in the first round this year, but they win the in-season tournament. Is this season a success?
No. Okay. Because you have to get out of the first round if you're the Bucks this year. They've been bounced in the first round for the past 3 years.
I mean, even the second round.
Yeah.
Even if they get bumped in the second round, is it a win?
I think you got to get out of the first round. Period. I think Giannis has to play.
Well, but let's say the Bucks lose in the second round.
Yeah.
And they win the in-season tournament. If you're the Bucks front office, are you sitting there saying this is a success, or is Giannis going to have to go on the stand again and give a speech about how losing's part of learning?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess that we'll see. It is prime NBA trade deadline time.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some big names in the market right now. I think the most important one right now is Jimmy Butler. First and foremost, do you think he's going to get traded at all? Because I think that's a really big question with him right now. Obviously, Jimmy has been a player who's had like some really poor luck with that in the past couple of years, you know, going from Minnesota or Philly, started in Minnesota, Chicago. Yep. You know, so like he's kind of been all over the map. But yeah, I just have a hard time thinking that he's going to get traded. I really do.
Me personally, I do not see him getting traded.
Okay.
I don't really know why they would. I don't think that his value now will be as much as his value this offseason. I think that the Heat would rather stick with what they have now and then get rid of him in the offseason if they're going to do it. Zach LaVine, however, I think is almost guaranteed going to be traded.
Okay.
He's having a better season than we thought he would. He's at like 22 points a game right now.
Yep.
And he is getting looked at from teams all over the league, like the Lakers. I don't know who's on the short list of teams, but I feel like Zach LaVine is a guy that we talk about every year.
Yes.
And yet hasn't really moved. And I mean, I guess I'm wondering, will the Bulls finally pull the trigger this year?
I don't know what a package for him would look like. I think the answer right now is the teams that are looking to move up to get a really good player in a role piece position are probably teams like the Warriors, potentially the Lakers, and then
the Clippers.
Yeah, maybe. You know, I think the Warriors probably have the best package right now because you're going to be giving up someone like Kuminga, you know, Healed, you know, some piece, some veteran piece that's kind of already established themselves, who's probably on an expiring contract, and then a few picks. But I do think that this is the year that the Bulls need to go in some direction, whether that's blowing it up completely, whether that's investing in the star players that you have, whether that's trying to build your young players. Like, do something. You cannot be in that 10 to 14 range again without having the same players on the roster. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be something different.
So I think that the trade package for LaVine is at least, I think it's 3 first-round picks minimum.
Okay.
I mean, we saw Mikal Bridges was worth 5 this offseason.
Yep.
And obviously Mikal's a better player, objectively speaking, but I think that Zach LaVine's worth 3 and then players. And I think if it's the Warriors, they could get away with 2, and then a guy like Buddy Hield has a 1-year contract, so that he would only be on for another 4 months.
Yep.
And a guy like Kyle Anderson, a DeAnthony Melton possibly could be thrown into that.
Yeah,
they're all guys who are probably probably in those talks. I think if you're the Clippers, you would look at a guy like Chris Dunn, who's been good, or a Derrick Jones Jr.
Okay.
And so I think that Levine moves. I think that he goes. And I think that his package is at least 3 and then some veteran players.
And you think he goes before the deadline, not during the offseason?
I think he goes before the deadline.
Okay.
Another guy that I think goes before the deadline, maybe not because the Bulls are willing to get rid of him, but more so because they won't be able to say no to the package that they get, is Nikola Vucevic. And I think that he will be going to the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm going to go out and say it. I think that the Lakers are going to make a push for Nikola Vucevic this season because if they get a tried and true 5, that allows Anthony Davis to free up and play in the 4 and be a roamer, mostly on defense. And it also allows someone who can go in there and guard Nikola Jokic, which I think is a huge part of what the Lakers are looking for. And if Vucevic can add maybe 15 points and 12 rebounds a game, I think that he'll fit into that Lakers roster very nicely.
I mean, he's being projected for 2 second-round picks right now.
Which is ridiculous.
That's a guy you got to pull the trigger on if you're the Lakers.
I mean, I think that if you throw a first and maybe a player into that conversation, that the Bulls, maybe they don't want to part ways with him because he is putting up 22 points a game. But at the end of the day, he's 33, 34, maybe older years old.
And you got to move on. You got to move in some direction.
He's still bringing 22 points a game this season and
he's
like 12
really good.
rebounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're the Lakers, I think that you have to go all in on a guy like that. And when you looked at their run that they made when they won in the bubble, they played Anthony Davis alongside a big like Dwight Howard, who at that age was playing very similarly to the way that Vucevic is right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's shooting 21-9. He's got 21-9 and 3 on 58.7% from the field. Like, he is still a very solid piece and could be a very good contributing piece on a winning team, in my opinion. So I think that both these guys will probably be off Chicago by the end of the season. I don't know if both these deals get done before the deadline. But I don't see them wanting either of these players. I think that, the super team in Chicago of DeMar DeRozan, of Zach LaVine, and of Nikola Vucevic kind of crashed and burned and really was just one of the worst super teams that's ever been put together, if I have to say it. I don't even think you can consider it to be a super team. I just think you can say that like it was just...
They're bad. They're bad at basketball.
Poor roster construction. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll be interested to see where these 3 land. And I don't think that Jimmy will move before the deadline, but I do think that he will be off the team if they don't make a playoff run this year.
Definitely. Let's move towards NFL again.
All right.
Let's close out this episode by making our picks. You actually beat my ass last week, which was crazy because we had a 3-week carryover.
Yep.
And I was pissed about it, if we're being honest.
Feels good. Feels good to have the ball back in my court here.
Last week I went 0-2 in fantasy and lost the picks. So had a rough week last week. However, we're going to bounce back this week. Give me your first pick.
All right. First pick for me here. A weird slate of games, but I think that this one's a pretty obvious one. I think Green Bay has looked like a really good team this year. And I'm going to take them -2.5 over Seattle.
Yeah, I like that pick. Seattle's a good team on paper, but I don't think that they'll keep up with the Packers. My first pick, Chiefs just keep getting away with shit, to be honest. Like, they somehow just keep winning against really, really bad football teams. I have them -4 over the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, good pick. Obviously, this is a game that I probably won't watch, even though I want to watch Jameis Winston play football, but I just can't stand watching the Chiefs win. So, another team that's looked really poor this year, but I do think will get it done this weekend, is the Falcons. They're only favored by 4 over the Raiders. So for me, I think that that's pretty, that's a pretty good line. I just think that the Raiders have been so incredibly bad, and they're looking to not win football games, that like this is a good time to take the Falcons, who need a win.
Need one real bad. I know I was talking about how I'm selling on them. However, this week I will be buying. I have the Broncos over the Indianapolis Colts. This is kind of a game that could really determine the AFC wildcard picture. It has serious playoff implications, and I don't think that the Colts are a good enough football team to take out the Broncos. I think if anyone, it would be the Dolphins. So I've got Broncos -4.
Okay, good pick. For my last one of the week, I am going to take Tampa Bay +3 over the Chargers. Again, this is another game that has massive playoff implications, and I think while Tampa Bay continues to try and fight for that AFC South divisional title, I think that they will, win this game or at least cover the 3-point spread.
Yep. My last pick, I've got Cincinnati Bengals need to win out if their playoff hopes are going to stay alive. They can't do that if they don't beat the Titans this week, who have been, just a plain horrible football team.
Really bad.
So I was actually shocked when I saw this line and got it 6th overall pick. I got Bengals -5 over the Titans.
Okay. Let's move into game of the week here. I think this one was a pretty obvious one. We got the Lions and the Bills, two of the best teams in the NFL, clashing on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football?
Sunday afternoon football. I think that this game determines who the best team in the NFL is.
Okay. I disagree because I don't think the Bills are legitimate, but I will defer to you for your take
but
here.
But if the Bills beat the Lions, then you can't make an argument about that.
Yeah, I agree.
So it really does determine who the best team in football is.
Okay.
I have the Lions winning this game.
All right. My gut says to go with the Lions as well, but for the sake of parity, I will take the Bills here.
You love doing that.
I do.
It's going to bite you in the ass.
It didn't last week.
Yeah, because the Mac Jones Jaguars beat the Tennessee Titans, dude. Congrats, bro. That game was a toss-up.
On the subject of that, not game of the week, we have the Jets and the Jags, all right? Two awful football teams facing off. In a game that no one will be watching in the 1 p.m. slate. Tell me what your take on this game is, because if you slander Mac Jones one more time, I'm going to jump through this camera right now.
Then jump through the camera because I'm going to slander Mac Jones. Mac Jones does own the New York Jets, but also so does every other team in the football league, which is why I don't think that it's significant. I will be taking the Jets this week.
All right. I'm also taking the Jets this week.
Boo. Boo. How are you going to glaze Mac Jones and then take the Jets, dude? Mac Jones last week had 180 yards passing and 2 interceptions, and they won on 2 field goals.
Hell yeah, they did. Mac Jones is one burger away from being out of the NFL, dude. He is the 38th best quarterback in the NFL. He will always be a backup for the rest of his life.
I think that's generous. I think that there's a lot of backup quarterbacks that are better than him. Because if he was a better backup quarterback, would he be playing in Jacksonville?
No.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Whatever.
That'll conclude our episode. 40-year-old retired golfer. You know what I mean?
He just looks like he just looks like he shouldn't be in the NFL.
Yeah, fair.
All right, well, that'll conclude our episode. As always, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week to wrap up our picks again and give you some more NFL, NBA content. But until then, this has been The Corner Office, and I'm Jack Byrne.
I'm Alex Benders.
Go on.
23.